Welcome to the Goalpost, the podcast where it's all about long-term player development. We're here to talk soccer through a different lens, one that puts the players before the scoreboard and progress before pressure. This is all youth soccer with a purpose. All development, all the time. I'm your host, Jason Glover. Understanding development and using a growth matrix to be able to use it as a roadmap so that you can appropriately develop and analyze and try to assist in a player's development. So today we're going to break down something foundational, something that sits behind every decision we make as a club, as coaches, and as long-term development managers of players. So the matrix itself, it's not a checklist, it's not a test, and it's not something that you pass or fail. It's more or less a map, long-term timeline, so that it gives you a way to understand growth across what we kind of identified as 5 major pillars: technical, tactical, physical development, mental toughness and mindset, and then the last one, character. And so when you look at it from that type of approach, what you'll see is in that first pillar, thinking about technical mastery, ball control, first touch, passing, dribbling, finishing. This is really kind of like, oh, that player passes the eye test, right? Because it's visual. It's the one thing that parents most naturally focus on first. But the truth is, technical mastery is not about performing clean drills. It's about applying technique in game context. So just in that one sentence, I'll repeat it again. Technical mastery is not about performing clean drills. It's about applying technique in game context, because a player needs to be able to use both feet with their first touch, control under pressure, dribbling in tight spaces, changes of speed and direction, and then several types of finishing. And my point is, these skills, they don't grow from copying moves. They grow from situations. You have to play the game. You have to play small-sided games. You need defenders. You need teammates, pressure, chaos, timing, and repetition inside the flow of play. That's why isolated drills don't necessarily work so well. Because, look, a part of a player's development is being able to individually train by themselves. And people go, well, my kid can juggle 500 times or let's say 20 times. The number doesn't matter. That's not technical. That's, if there's 5 pillars, that's pillar 5, like character, habits, and lifestyle, or mental toughness, even pillar 4, because it's repetitive, it's mundane, but you need that in order to develop. But you can't just juggle and then be a good player. It doesn't work that way. You need opponents, you need chaos, you need timing, defending, you need all of that. You need the game in order to develop. So pillar 2 is more about tactical intelligence, understanding the game, scanning, timing. It's most often the pillar that's misunderstood the most, because parents see a bad pass and think, my kid needs to work on passing. But the matrix will tell you something deeper. It's not just the pass, it's the decision and execution behind the pass. So you have to learn as a player, when you're developing, when to dribble, when to pass, how to scan, how to use deception, how to move off the ball, right? So that's like part of the tactical intelligence. But what you'll often see or hear is a parent may say, "Ah, just if my kid could learn to pass, or if the team would have known that he was gonna or she was gonna pass at that spot, then we would have scored." So this is where communication, what's happening around me, decision making, what actions fit the situation, and then execution. How do you carry it out? And then, because if that's the umbrella over everything, communication, decision making, execution, then underneath it is position, moment, direction, speed. So when you say, "Oh, my child made a bad pass," you're thinking you what we want coaches, parents, and players to understand is it's not about the bad pass. It's about the communication before, the decision making, the execution. It's the ecosystem around position, moment, direction, speed. This is how we want to coach. This is how we should be diagnosing mistakes. And this is how we can accelerate learning. Another pillar is physical development, speed, strength, endurance. So when you think of that, that is always a number one developmental hijacker because early developers are immediately taken care of. Late bloomers are often pushed aside. What we know is kids grow differently at different rates, and it's wildly different between boys and girls. Early bloomers look dominant. Late bloomers look behind or uninterested. But what we're trying to project here is that physical traits will evolve and they're not permanent. So players need to be working on balance and agility, and they need to have sprint mechanics, and they have to have core strength. But none of that happens without one thing: time. And the game rewards patience. Physical development is a long runway, and it's certainly not a quick flight. So you have to be patient. And what you may think as your child is on the field standing there, and you go, the other players are running around and they're doing so much better. And the number one thing is the comparison to the other child on the field. That's rule number one. Don't do that. The rule number two is understand what your child is going through and empathize with it. So the first time they're on the field, maybe they're walking around, watching, observing, they're participating in their mind. Even if they're picking flowers off of the ground, they're participating in some manner, and it may be too much for you as a parent to accept. And so then the first reaction is to get upset and yell and say, "You need to start running or we're leaving." There's always a threat with those type of players. And the other thing is there's a different threat that goes with the early developers. And you want to know what that is? The early developers, they risk performance and emotional stability being if then this, meaning if I perform really well, then my parents support me more. If I have a bad game, my parents don't talk to me and they're mean to me. You understand how that could affect a player. And it happens. It happens everywhere. I'm talking to the people. It's you. Like, you've done it. Everyone's done it. We're human. It's a human mistake, but it happens. But kids are resilient, which is why kids are unconditional towards their parents. Some parents are conditional under they will support and encourage under the condition that you perform. And when you do that, it's risk reward. But the relationship is strained because it's only based on the child's performance. And which is why a lot of kids throw fits on the field because there's so much tension around their performance. And when things don't go the way that they want them to go and they can't self-regulate, then they throw a fit on the field. They start crying. that's difficult. So we have to be able to understand that kids can bounce back from mistakes. We got to give them something to believe in. We have to focus on routines. We have to provide emotional control. And these traits, again, don't show up in drills. They show up in moments of struggle, moments when we allow kids to experience without rescuing them. And I'll go a step further in explaining this. If you want a place to be, and if we can create this across the entire club, here's the situation. It's a game between two teams. One team is going to win if everything is played straight up, and win by enough to where it probably doesn't help them to play the game in that manner. Okay. So you could win, let's just say it's 8-2. Or, and you know both teams, so you know exactly what you're doing. Or you go to your team and you say, we're going to only play with our weak foot today. And I know it's going to be a struggle. And I know you're not going to be happy about it. And sometimes I'm going to play you on the left side, and sometimes I'm going to play you on the right side. And sometimes you're going to be up top, and sometimes you're going to be in the back. And we might fail a lot, but we're going to bounce forward. So what does that mean? So you play the game, you go up a couple goals, halftime, you give them the option, and this is why kids are more resilient than adults. You tell the kids, you go, hey, at halftime, you say, you have a choice. You can play 5 minutes, first 5 minutes with your strong foot and weak foot, or the last 5 minutes, strong foot, weak foot. Every player said, I want to continue to play with my weak foot. I want to get better, regardless of the score. Okay, perfect. So we're pulling kids off the field when they are in the game and they subconsciously choose to use their right foot, strong foot. We pull them off, we remind them, we put them back on. The game is awesome. The team that's being restricted with weak foot only loses. So here's where you go back to. Can you show up in moments of struggle? Do we allow kids to experience without rescuing? I could have rescued them. I gave them the option. They said they didn't want the option. Towards the end of the game, I could have put the best players on and said, hey, use your strong foot so we can win this game and get out of here. Or do you just let it go? Because nobody cares at the end of the day. The game is over. There's no record of it. And even if there was, it doesn't matter. You're misleading yourself if you think the records matter. You really are. And you have to really listen. You're misleading yourself if you think these scores matter. You're wrong if you think they do. I'm telling you, you're wrong. And you may not want to hear it, but it's the truth. The scores don't matter. What matters, and buckle up, what matters is that you allow these kids to experience failure without rescuing them. And we got a lot of parents that refuse to allow this to happen. They're all over their kids and they're not allowing for failure. And here's the other thing. And I don't want to belabor this point, but there's also a whole other group that will tout how great their kids are and the teams that they're on, and they've got 70 goals and 2 goals against, and this team just gels together so well. The communication, and that's a developmental team. Oh, and it is so amazing. Blah, blah, blah. The reality is you're giving your kids another false impression and you're not allowing them to struggle. Because here's what I know. On a majority of those teams across the country, even across the city, it doesn't matter where you're at. These top teams that are running through their age groups, and the clubs have put together superpower teams, the best players. You know what you're really doing is you're desensitizing the empathy side of the sport because all they know how to do is they're winning, they're playing against competition that isn't appropriate, and everybody goes, "Well, what do you want them to do? Play 3 years up?" Yeah. How about that? How about yeah? Because guess what? You know what you're doing with the late bloomers? Oh, we won't let them play their own, play a year up because they can't handle it. But they're playing against their own age group and they're struggling. So why do the late bloomers always have to struggle and the early developers always get lied to? Because that's the reality and that's what is happening. So the age group change is good because it's starting to buffer some of this nonsense. It is out of control. And so when you think about development, this is what you have to be careful about. Because if your kid is on the top team and they're always on the top team and they're always playing, mark my word, take that player, put them on a below average team, tell your child to play with their weak foot and watch the unraveling happen in real time. Mentally, emotionally, pretty non-existent in those environments. Like they lose their mind because they don't know how to cope with adversity when the teammates on their team are not top flight A-level players. So you're doing a disservice because here's what happens when you're so focused on the optics of got to be on the top team, got to be performing, got to play in all these different leagues and where are we stack ranked and all of the stuff that goes on because it does. And I hear about it and it's laughable because it doesn't have anything to do with development, but people are caught up in it because it's a head fake. And the head fake is that the top teams are the ones that are developing, but the reality is those are just the early developers. And what really matters in those early developer players, the number one pillar for early developers is character. Character. And you know what happens in most of those teams, those high performing teams that are playing 7v7 and 9v9? I'll tell you what happens to character when the tough moments start to happen, when everybody else starts to catch up. The identity that those kids have been gripping onto for so many years starts to be lost. So the high performing early developer, their identity is only attached to winning. And when winning sort of becomes a little bit more gray, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, winning, it doesn't always just happen and occur. And it really kind of like it settles in. You know what really starts to happen? Character is revealed and kids quit. You understand that early developers quit because it got tough. They didn't have a chance because the parents didn't allow them to experience failure without rescuing them. And it happens all the time. So pillar 5 for early developers, character, that's the number one reason why kids quit. Character. So the matrix needs to be focused on taking ownership, tracking the training and development, encouraging teammates, being a good teammate, having empathy. And this is the silent pillar of all of them. The one that shapes long-term success way beyond soccer. And you'd be surprised what the numbers look like. The numbers are real. By 13 or 14, like 75% of kids quit sports. Like it's a ghost town. They all disappear. Look at it. Go to 4v4, 7v7 at Slica in the spring. The sidelines are packed. They're jam-packed. Go to 9v9 first year. Pretty good showing. Go to the second year of 9v9. Cuts in half. Go to the second year of 11v11. It's usually 6 parents that are dedicated to traveling, and the other kids hop rides with those parents, and you're trying to just keep it all together. So how do we use it? How do we guide the decisions when a parent will ask us, why isn't my child playing a certain position? Why isn't my child on this team? Why isn't my child advancing faster? Then we go back to the matrix and we say, when we evaluate technical strengths, we talk about tactical strengths, physical readiness, mental traits, and character habits. And we try to identify different strengths in each one. That's why the coaches are going through their whole process right now of identifying and marking down where kids are falling in the development pool, so that when we get all of the data, we can build a plan that correlates to the path that we're creating. So your child's path isn't random, and your child's placement is not guesswork. It's intentional, it's instructional, it's structured, and it's individualized. How you can support this at home, because what we know is soccer starts at home. The roadmap is ask your child what they're working on at training. Encourage your child to scan the field so many times in a game. Normalize mistakes. Celebrate the awkwardness of the game and enjoy it. Because when you look back on it, it's blurry. It is so blurry. But when you're in the moment, it's crystal clear. But looking back, it's forgetful, quite honestly. So we have to look at long-term development over short-term results. Kids might get cut, they might quit, they might burn out because they lack talent. Not really. It's really never because of that. It is sometimes because parents panic and they try to microwave a development plan, a coach who chases wins, and a club who doesn't educate. It takes a lot of time to come up with this information and structure it and put it together. The club is spending a massive amount of time educating and putting together the guardrails for the age group change. So this matrix, it doesn't it protects your child, okay? It protects your child by slowing everything down and then widening the view. That's the whole purpose of this, because it's too obvious to pick out the early developers. When I'm looking at the players, I can almost guarantee you when their birth date is based on how they perform on the field. And I'm always pleasantly surprised when I see a name and I go, oh, wow, they're actually going to have an opportunity to play in the age group that would have been younger than them this year. Like, that's interesting. For example, like a 2016, birth date will eventually now be playing with 2017s. So that's encouraging for some of these late bloomers, right? I mean, you kind of get scooped up and taken care of. So it's a beautiful plan to put in place. The people who are upset about the changes don't understand that this is actually how we collect late bloomers, which is the intention of all of this. Is we know where the early developers are. It's too obvious. It's the late bloomers. That's what you're trying to connect with, which is why if you're in the club in the younger age groups and you're with Coach Jason or Coach Mike or Coach Doug, you're getting a lot of this type of information because you see it on the field. You see it in the trainings. They're playing a lot. They're mixed up. Like, the teams aren't so rigid and best and worst and all of that. It's like kids are mixed in and they're competing, and there's a lot of failure. There's a lot of challenges that go on. It's a really good environment. And the older age groups, which there's less of, they're in the more traditional phase where you're keeping your team together and you're developing to get to high school. Okay. So it's different, but overall, everyone's using the exact same plan because it works. So thanks for listening to the Goalpost. And remember, it's all development all the time. I'm really glad you joined us today on the Goalpost. Raising and supporting young players isn't always easy, but choosing to focus on their growth, their joy, and their character. Now that's the right thing to do. You might not see the results right away, but every small moment you invest makes a big difference in your child's life. And remember, all development, all the time. That's not just a motto, it's a promise. We'll be here next time cheering with you.